Yeah. You guys all set? So the question we're looking at here tonight is, can America afford an aging society? And can America afford to grow older? And most importantly, can we do it with intergenerational fairness? Meaning, can we do it without sticking it to our children and our grandchildren and leaving them with the bills? And it really is, in our opinion, AARP's opinion, one of the most important issues of our time, just because of the demographic imperative that's bearing down on us. And the answer, of course, is we can afford to grow older. And besides, what choice do we have in the matter when you think about it? What's the alternative? America can afford to grow older, and we will all benefit from it as a society if we do so, if we take the right steps. AARP is fond of saying what we do for our members, we actually do for all generations, and that's the way we look at it. The problem, though, is as a nation, in our opinion, it's time to cut the gloom and doom talk, saying, oh my God, what's going on here? And it's time to start addressing the issues and getting down to business. John Gardner, this is one of my favorite quotes, once said, "We are all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems." And as we look at aging in America, AARP sees three great opportunities. The first one is to transform the nation's healthcare system. The second one is to strengthen our retirement system. And the third one is to create more livable communities for our aging population. So first I'll talk about the healthcare issue. And apparently, from what John said, I'm on the same track as one of the previous speakers here as far as aging and healthcare and costs. Our system is a mess. There's no other way to put it. Costs are skyrocketing. Millions of Americans don't have health insurance coverage, and the quality of care is far from where it should be. Transforming the healthcare system in this country right now is the greatest challenge facing our nation today, but it also is probably the most important thing we can do to improve the quality of life for everyone, not just for our aging population, as well as to deliver care more intelligently and cost-effectively. And we will never fix the economy in this country if we don't tackle the healthcare problem. As you may know, because it was very controversial, AARP did support the Federal Affordable Care Act, the Federal Health Care Reform Law, and that was signed into law just a year ago this month. It isn't a perfect piece of legislation, and it won't solve all of our problems, but we felt it was an important step and necessary step in the right direction. As far as the aging of the population, the law strengthens Medicare and Medicaid while taking some very strong steps to rein in costs. Forgive me if you all know this, but I just want to make sure a lot of people don't understand what the difference is between Medicare and Medicaid. In a nutshell, Medicare is health coverage for people over 65. It's a federal program. Medicaid is pretty much a state-run program. It does have federal support, but it is health coverage for low-income individuals. And for those of you who like the double jeopardy question, do you know what a dual eligible is? It's someone who has both Medicare and Medicaid coverage. Just as an aside, AARP was founded in 1958 by a woman named Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus. She was a retired high school principal. She was the first female high school principal in the city of Los Angeles. After she retired, she went to visit a former colleague of hers who was also a career public school teacher, and she found that woman living in a chicken coop. This was in 1958, and that was before there was Medicare. And in those days, even though there was Social Security, even back then, out-of-pocket health care costs put a lot of people right over the edge, and a lot of retirees had no health coverage whatsoever. So that's why she founded AARP 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. So many people look at the rising costs of Medicare and Medicaid combined with the aging of the population, and they conclude that they are unsustainable budget busters. But keep in mind that most of the factors that contribute to the rising costs of those two programs, namely growth in utilization, costs of new technology and drugs, and soaring prices, are the same factors that are driving up the cost of health care for everyone, no matter what your age. They are the same factors. This isn't an age-specific issue. It is a problem with the healthcare system in the country in general. But that said, there are a lot of ways to make Medicare and Medicaid more efficient and to reduce costs. And I'll just touch on a couple briefly that are directly associated with the cost of aging, because that's where we're focusing on tonight. Two big factors are buying prescription drugs more cheaply. And the second factor is redirecting spending more toward home and community-based care and less on nursing homes. Keep in mind that Medicare does not pay for most long-term care. That's a big flaw in the program. It does not pay for most long-term care. And we're finding at AARP, our younger members, our age group, begins at 50. We're finding a lot of our members, as they start trying to help their aging parents, are shocked that Medicare does not cover most long-term care costs. On the other hand, Medicaid, again the state program, is the primary payer for most nursing home costs, and that is a big ticket item. As I said, AARP supported the new health care reform law because it does have a lot of great stuff in it for seniors, provisions that will improve quality while driving down costs as our population ages. A couple of them, again going back to prescription drugs. If you're a senior who's paying thousands of dollars out of your own pocket for medication, your benefits under Medicare Part D will improve. That's the prescription drug benefit, because they're phasing out the coverage gap that's known as the dreaded donut hole. If you fall into that coverage gap beginning this year, you'll get a 50% discount on brand name drugs. That discount will gradually increase until the donut hole is closed in the year 2020. This is a factor for the aging of the population and the costs associated with it, because older persons are the most users of prescription drugs. And prescription drugs in this day and age are what keeps people healthy and out of more expensive care. Prescription drugs, for example, keep down your blood pressure, keeps you out of the hospital. That's the role of many prescription drugs right now, and that is why they are so important to the aging of the population. We hear a lot of stories at AARP about seniors who can't afford to fill their prescriptions, so they don't take them, or they cut their pills in half, or whatever. And what happens? They end up in the hospital. So think about it. Make it easier for people to afford, say, a $50 prescription. That's the one choice. Or the other choice is, let's not make sure they get their drugs. They end up in the hospital, and the hospital is what, $1,500 a day. I mean, you don't need a PhD in economy, to be able to figure this out. The more efficient, cost-effective way is to make sure people get their prescription drugs and keep them out of the hospital. Also, under the Affordable Care Act, prevention just got cheaper, and we know it is a lot less costly, again, to keep someone healthy than to treat them after they're sick, no matter what age. Annual checkups and screening tests that can detect problems at an earlier and treatable stage will now be covered with no co-payments or deductibles under Medicare. For example, seniors will be able to get free colonoscopies, mammograms, bone density screenings, and much more is being done with chronic care management that will also help drive down costs. Again, these are steps that will save money on the front end, a lot of money. Independent living is another priority of the new law. States will get added financial support for home and community-based services. We know that most people want to remain in their own homes and in their communities as they age. We also know that home and community-based services are generally cheaper than nursing home or other forms of institutional care. But in this country right now, we do not have enough community-based care. We pour Medicaid dollars and people, frankly, into nursing homes instead of developing a coordinated system of long-term services and supports that will help people age with dignity and in the setting of their own choice. Now, Massachusetts has already received some sizable grants through the Affordable Care Act to improve home and community-based services, to set up some pilot programs, including a $110 million grant that the state was awarded just last month for rebalancing long-term care. Massachusetts is on the bad side of, as far as rebalancing long-term care. We have a higher reliance on institutional care than most other states in the country. And so we're very much behind the curve on that. So hopefully some of this grant money will help us to balance the system better. But I have to say, and this is my little advocacy cap at the moment, even though the Patrick administration has been actively pursuing grants under the ACA to help us do better for our aging population, they're practicing some backward thinking when it comes to the state budget right now. There's a battle underway on Beacon Hill to save the adult day health program in this state. The governor has proposed a $55 million cut to the program, which would decimate services to 11,000 frail elders. They would completely lose their services. That program keeps people in their own homes and communities and out of nursing homes. It's estimated that if the program folds, 20% of those people will end up in a skilled nursing facility within a month or so. Nursing home costs for these displaced ADH patients will cost the state $164.5 million per year, versus the current cost, if we keep these people in ADH, the current cost would be $34.5 million. That's really easy math, folks. In other words, it would be an increase in state Medicaid costs of $130 million. So it makes absolutely no sense. Cut a $55 million program, and as a result of the cut, it's going to drive up costs by $130 million. Again, it just makes no sense. This is a simple way that we can help keep the costs of the aging of the population down. The entire elder community in this state has rallied around this program to try to save it. There was a big rally at the State House last week. AARP had a teletown hall last Thursday with about 7,000 of our members on the call. It's a battle we really must win if we are to hold down the costs in this state that are associated with aging. So if you hear about that out there, I hope you will talk to your state legislator, your senator, or representative and voice support for the Adult Day Health Program. Another way to reduce Medicaid costs associated with the aging of the population is the implementation of a voluntary national insurance program that will provide cash benefits to you if you have a qualifying disability that limits your day-to-day living. The program is called the Community Living Assistance Services and Supports Program. I always have a hard time getting through that, but it's called CLASS for short. It is also part of the new federal health reform law, and it was a pet project of the late Senator Ted Kennedy. He had been trying to get funding and support for it for years through a couple of different vehicles. It is a voluntary long-term care insurance program that has the potential to help millions of Americans pay for long-term services and supports that enable them to live in their homes and communities. Repealing CLASS or stopping its implementation, as some opponents of the ACA are suggesting, would take away a choice that would otherwise be available to many Americans to help them take responsibility to plan and pay for the services they need, rather than rely on public funding such as Medicaid. That is the key. It would keep these people off the Medicaid rolls. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated about $2 billion in federal savings to Medicaid due to CLASS, and that's just in the first few years of CLASS paying benefits. The figure does not include the savings that would also accrue to the states through their share of Medicaid spending. We must do more to support independent living among our aging population. It is not only the right thing to do fiscally right now, it is also the right thing to do morally. Now, I could go on for hours and talk about all the healthcare implications of the aging of the population, but I won't, because I think I only have 25 minutes. So let's briefly turn to economic security. Excuse me for a sec. We can enhance the retirement security in this country by strengthening Medicare, by creating more pensions and savings, and by providing employment opportunities for people as long as they want to or need to work. Let's look first at Social Security. It is the most successful domestic program in our history. It is a risk-free, guaranteed pension that on average replaces 40% of a retiree's wages. Social Security does have some problems, most definitely, but unlike health care, it is not a horrendous mess. It only needs we don't need to dismantle it to save it. There are some reasonable, moderate changes we can make to achieve solvency and fiscal soundness, just has been done in the past with Social Security. It has been tweaked every 12 or 15 years. This isn't an unheard of proposition. But right now, the solution shouldn't be worse than the problem. There's a right way to strengthen Social Security. There's a wrong way to do it. There's a lot of talk right now that we should be rating Social Security to reduce the federal deficit, which is not fair because Social Security did not cause the federal deficit. Have no doubt about it, protecting Social Security right now is first and foremost a question of values in this country, in AARP's opinion. Prior to the creation of Social Security 70 years ago, older Americans were the poorest and the most neglected population in the nation. It was absolutely disgraceful. The fact is, right now, Social Security is the only guaranteed, inflation-proof, lifelong benefit that millions of workers, present and future, can count on. Think about it. Companies can go bankrupt, the stock market can crash, taking your 401k with it, which many of us know personally over the last couple of years. But Social Security is your only source of income in retirement that you cannot outlive. And I want to be very clear, Social Security is not welfare. You pay into the system during your working years, and then you get back a benefit after you retire. It is money that you have earned through years of hard work. There are, again, 4 pillars of retirement security in this country. I know some people say there's only 3. AARP considers there to be 4. And there is only one of them that is risk-free, and that is Social Security. The other pillars are pensions and savings, continued earnings, and we also include health insurance as part of one of those pillars. That's our 4th pillar, which differs us from some other folks on that. But right now, less than half of working Americans have a pension plan where they work. Personal savings are at an all-time low. Americans have always been horrible savers. And the average older American in particular now spends nearly a third of his or her income on health care. And although many older Americans are having to work longer or are choosing to do so, age discrimination and a weak job market are limiting what they can earn. So again, the fact is Social Security supplies nearly half of the retirement income for many older Americans. The percentages are even higher for minority population, and for 1/3 of beneficiaries, especially older women. Social Security is all that stands between them and poverty in their old age. Keep in mind, too, a lot of people lose sight of this. Social Security isn't just about the aging of the population. Social Security pays survivors' benefits to the children of deceased workers who have paid into the program, and that is very, very important. Social Security, contrary to what a lot of people think, is strong. As I said previously, it is not the mess that healthcare is. When you hear some people say that it is broke or that it is bust or that it is bankrupt, it isn't true. Instead of a major overhaul again, it just needs some fine-tuning. Right now, if nothing is done, Social Security can still pay full benefits for nearly 25 years and 75% of current benefits for decades beyond that. But 75% isn't good enough for current retirees, and we don't think it should be good enough for their children and their grandchildren. If we make some sensible, easy changes now, we can honor obligations to all generations, both present and future. There is a long list of very reasonable changes. I'm not going to go into all of them, but one that I will give you just as an example, because to us it is a somewhat easy change. Right now, the current maximum wage subject to Social Security payments is about $107,000, meaning once your income hits above $107,000, you stop paying into the Social Security system. If we raise that cap, for example, to $140,000, slowly phase it in over 10 years so that there isn't a shock for the person who gets the paycheck, that one step alone would lower Social Security's projected shortfall by 43%. Those are the kinds of solutions we should be talking about right now when we're talking about the aging of our population. And for the people who say that they think Social Security has no place in American society, and there are many who think that it should just be abolished, do we really want to go back to those days when older Americans have to fend for themselves, when older Americans were the poorest population in this country? I don't think so. Another factor that a lot of people don't take into consideration when they talk about the doom and gloom of the aging of the population is the fact that with people living longer and healthier lives, many folks are staying in the workforce longer. Some because they want to, and some frankly because they have to, and a lot of that goes back to what I was saying about the lack of savings, the impact of the current economy on nest eggs, especially for people who were on the brink of retirement, do not have a defined benefit pension plan, and saw their 401k turn into, a 201k or a 101k. Those people are really hurting right now. The number of people in the labor force between the ages of 55 and 64 is expected to grow by 33% between now and the year 2018. That's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I think Barry has some fresher data he's going to share with you later. And so the way we look at it, the aging of the boomer generation is redefining the workplace as much as women did, working women, mothers in the 60s and 70s. And think about it, when older persons remain in the workforce, they draw down less on public benefits, and they remain active consumers. They're still pouring their paycheck back into the economy. And there are also health benefits, both physical and psychological, of staying engaged and staying productive. And when we talk to some of our members, again, even though a lot of them say that they have to continue working for the monetary reasons, a lot of them say they want to continue working for the joy of it, for being engaged, for the camaraderie they get at a job that they love. And a lot of people right now also want to try something new and different at this point in their lives. Also, there is a business case for keeping older persons in the workforce. Mature workers will help avert the labor shortages that are predicted by the combined impact of the retirement of the baby boomers and the lower birth rate. The fact is we have more older workers available, we have less younger workers available. So if we keep folks into the workforce, this will help with the economy. It will help us afford the aging population. So we need to do, though, a couple of things to encourage the hiring of older workers. For starters, we must reduce age discrimination. That is becoming more and more prevalent. You would think with the aging of the population it would become less so, but it is becoming more so, we have found. We must also do a better job about educating employers about the abilities of older workers as well as the affordability of older workers. Older workers are good workers and they're smart workers, both for the bottom line and for the quality of your workforce. We must also do a better job of informing older people about the opportunities that are out there and the advantages of staying in the workforce, including delaying drawing down on Social Security. If they stay in the workforce, if they delay drawing down on Social Security, they get a bigger Social Security check when they start drawing down. We also need government policies that encourage employers to hire older workers and that encourage individuals to keep working. The government does need to play a role here. Northeastern and Dean Bluestein have been doing a lot of great work in this area, and they are to be commended for it. They've been taking a real leadership role. At AARP, we do have an award called Best Employers for Workers Over 50. It's now in its 10th year. It recognizes employers who are ahead of the curve, who recognize not only the value of older workers, but the business need for them. These are employers who don't tell us what it is they think they may want to plan to sort of do. These are employers who are actually doing it now. They've instituted innovative policies and practices that help keep older workers employed and have made them stronger companies. I'm pleased to say we've had several winners of this award over the years here in Massachusetts. Massachusetts General Hospital has won a couple of times. Mass Institute of Technology has won a couple of times. Harvard has. DentaQuest Ventures, which is, as its name indicates, a dental services company, and Draper Labs over in Cambridge, which is a huge defense contractor. They have won. Maybe Northeastern should apply sometime. So again, on the retirement security piece, if we just make some moderate adjustments to Social Security, if we encourage people to increase their individual savings and investments, and if we continue to advance the idea of work for older persons, America can afford to grow older without shifting the burden to younger generations. The last opportunity I want to talk about, and I'll do it very briefly, is creating more livable communities. As I've said, most people want to stay where they are, at home, in familiar surroundings. This may seem obvious, but there are so many barriers right now out there to living in our own homes and communities as we age. To remain independent, for example, in this automobile society, people must be able to drive safely as long as they possibly can. But when driving is no longer the best option, they must have ways to avoid social isolation. They must be able to get to pharmacies. They've got to be able to get to church. They've got to be able to get to supermarkets, grocery stores, to see their doctors. In cities with mass transit, there are obvious possibilities. But even in cities with mass transit, many of the systems go on a reduced schedule in the middle of the day. And that's when we want to encourage older people to go out and do their errands and such. We don't want them out at 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, when everybody's trying to get to work. And why would you, if you were 75 years old, why would you want to get back into that you know, mid-time, the morning rush? So those are the times people need public transportation most. So if we could encourage major municipalities not to cut down on their midday schedules, it might encourage more older persons to be able to get out and get done what they have to do. And then, you know, it's compounding factors in the suburbs where nearly half the population lives. Mass transit is not always available. And in rural communities, it is simply not there. And when we talk about rural communities, I'm not just talking about South Dakota folks, I'm talking about the Berkshires. It is a big issue out in sections of our own state, like the Berkshires. A second key to helping people age independently in place is building or modifying homes to more easily accommodate older people. Successful aging in place means that people can afford to live in decent housing that meets their needs and helps them remain independent. So, lest you think I've gone off on a tangent here, how does the promotion of livable communities help America afford to grow old? Because again, if people remain independent, they are less likely to be drawing down on public assistance or the healthcare system. Continued independent living means substantial cost savings for society and for families. So I've talked about health and healthcare, about retirement security, about livable communities. Again, with the changes I've described, and this is just a few in a nutshell, America can afford to age, and we'll all benefit from it as a society. And we will also help support the wisdom and the time and the efforts of older people who are such a vital part of our lives. But the longer we study this, and the longer we debate it, and the longer we wallow in the gloom and doom, the worse the problems will become, the less time we will have to solve them equitably and not put the burden onto the younger generations. The sooner we take on these challenges, the less likely it will be that we will leave them for the next generation. We at ARP are determined to help our members live their best lives. We do it through our volunteer work, our publications, our partnerships, our state offices, through products and services that contribute to the social good, through legislative and legal advocacy. We are determined to make a difference for America. George Bernard Shaw has said that we are made wise not by the recollection of our past, but by the responsibility of our future. And we consider the responsibility of our future right now is to join together and solve some of these problems. We need to make sure this is a country where government stands sentry over vital programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and takes reasonable and responsible steps to strengthen them, not just for the aging of the population, but for the generations to come. We need to be a country where big and small businesses alike value older workers and see the business need for them, where people of all ages receive quality health care that they can afford, where parents and grandparents can remain in their homes and active in their communities for as long as possible, and where all Americans can afford to grow old with dignity and purpose and to continue chasing their dreams for as long as they possibly can. You know, think about it. Let's flip this argument. Back in the 1950s, early 1950s, when the baby boomer generation was being born and we had these 76 million kids showing up after World War II, did we say, well, sorry, with this demographic change, we can't afford to deal with this. We can't afford to build schools. We can't afford to build kid-friendly neighborhoods. We can't afford to train pediatricians. No, we did not say that. We made the necessary investments, and as a result, we have become a better society and the most powerful and influential nation in the world. That is what we need to do right now. As you can tell, I'm kind of fond of quotes, and one of my favorite quotes is attributed to John Wayne, and he has said, "Courage is saddling up even when you're scared half to death." It's time to saddle up, folks. We have this demographic imperative upon us, and we have got to start making some of these changes to deal with it. So thank you very much. I hope you found this helpful.